Five, four, three, two, one, and we're go. So I just want to do this real quick. I've got other work to get to today, but this issue came up of unrealized gain taxes. And I want to explain why this is a really good idea and why we absolutely shouldn't do it. So, first of all, to put this, why listen to me? Let me put this out there. So I am not currently, but was worth $2.2 million. That is the maximum net worth I've had. Now, obviously, that's not a lot. Anybody you know in real estate is far above that. But this was from investment in my business. I had a business. I was actually a minority owner in it. That's a different story. Poor choices made. But I was worth $2.2 million. And there's a lot of things that I learned through that process that I'm grateful for. I ended up getting voted off by the board. It was kind of a hostile takeover situation. But anyway, that's just as a backdrop. Because what that actually means is nothing. I had to sell, I had 3 Bitcoin that I sold to pay rent. That's how much Bitcoin was worth back then. And that was like the last of my money. And I was eating, I was eating ramen. I was in shared apartments. I had roommates and, apartment mates. Anyway, so with that as the backdrop, let's talk about this because I've learned a thing or two, even though I'm a software developer. So unrealized gain tax means that if the stock price of a company goes up, that your net worth goes up. Therefore, you pay taxes on your increase in value. And, when we're talking about people that we all love to hate, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, whatever, this seems like a really good idea. But let's break it down. So first of all, we need to understand how stocks work at a very basic level, which is that you are paying for the most expensive piece of the pie, right? So there's a whole pie, and basically what's going on is people who want to sell their piece of the pie have a holding price. And then when that holding price is met, they're willing to sell. Now, there's only a certain number of people that are interested in selling, and the availability of the stock is what causes the price to be high. It's not actually related to the worth of the company. In most cases, it's how much stock is available. So when the company is sold to investors, the stock gets chopped up and it can be divided, and then the value just goes down. You have twice as much, it's worth half as much, you have the same amount, whatever. But the stock is divided, and once it's sold, it's sold. Now, there may be owners of the company keep the majority share of the stock, which in many cases helps them keep voting rights. There's different types of stock. Some's just money, some voting, etc. But the thing is, it's not that all of the stock is worth the amount. It's that the person who is the most willing to sell one share of stock is what is determining the amount. So if you were to make more stock available, we don't know how many people want to buy the stock, right? Because they have a threshold. There could be 1 million people that want to buy the stock, but they want to buy it at $50, not at $150, right? So that's the first thing. So the stock is not worth what it appears to be worth, because as you sell more of it, it is worth less. Every share you sell, the next share you sell is worth less. Because once you satisfy all the people who wanted stock, regardless of the price they wanted to pay it at, there's nobody left who wants to buy the stock. Now, if you keep on lowering the price, you can create interest in people buying the stock. But this is not from the company, typically, although it could be from owners, or it could be, there actually is a way to hold stock as part of the company itself, I believe, or not in a special partition that's for selling, or I don't know all of the particulars of it. There's a lot of complexity to it, but the basic idea is that you're taking what the person who wants to sell their stock the most right now is willing to sell it for, and you multiply that by all of the stock. So let's say, for simple math, there's 1 million shares, and the person who wants to sell the most is willing to sell for $1. Now, all the rest of the stock is considered to be worth $1 million. But let's say that lots of people were willing to share the stock or sell the stock at $1. People who were willing to buy it at $1 would be exhausted, and then the price of the stock would begin to fall. So unrealized gains is really easy to gain. So, but let's just take it to that. So that's kind of the fallacy, the issue with it. So if we tax people on the stock price going up, another problem is this isn't actually related to the economy in terms of the consumer, like what you buy or sell. The price of Apple stock going up or down or Tesla stock going up or down doesn't actually affect the price or production of a Tesla car or an Apple MacBook. So it doesn't have a direct effect on the economy. So there's not, it's unrealized. It's not real, right? So if you were to tax these people who have lots of money in stock, well, the stock is basically, it's kind of their credit score. That's essentially what it is it's their credit score. It's a semi-tangible element that allows them to have credibility within groups of other people with money and ideas and that want to trade businesses, money, ideas, etc. And so it's kind of a credit score for them, how much stock they have. So it's not really the money they have, it's their credit score. So someone will say, well, because you have this much stock, this much net worth, I'm willing to gamble on you because you've managed to accumulate a lot of belief in wealth. It's not actual wealth, but it's the appearance of wealth. Or at least money. It's not, I mean, we can define wealth in different ways, but it's not money, it's the appearance of money. So anyway, so there's that. Okay, but let's say that we do this tax on unrealized gains. Wouldn't that be so great? All these big tech companies having to pay their share? Well, no. Because what they're going to do is they're going to game the system. They're going to create shell companies that they funnel money into to create losses, etc. But more than that, the big tech companies, they're not going to have a, 1,000% spike in their price. That's going to be smaller companies, right? Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. So the big companies, their price fluctuates, but it fluctuates in an amount that's actually taxable, but it's also an amount that they would just be able to create shell companies, move some money around, do market manipulation, and be able to keep the price pretty much at what they want it if it became a game of taxes. Because right now, it's a game of whose is bigger. But if it becomes a game of whose is bigger paired with a game of, well, whoever's is bigger has to pay the most taxes, then there's going to be, it just adds another element to the game, right? It goes from 2D chess to 3D chess, or 3D chess to 4D chess, or whatever you want to call it, right? So there's that aspect. So the big companies are not actually going to have to pay out all this money, because they talk about it as if, well, Elon Musk, if we do this unrealized gain tax, Elon Musk is going to have to pay all this money, but he's not, because he's not increasing in value so rapidly. That would be where the taxation comes from. It would be the increase in value. And you have this other issue with market trends where when the economy is good, people put a lot of money in stock, and when the economy is bad, they take it out. So when the economy is good, you would be losing money, which would cause the economy to be bad, because that's real money. Unrealized gains doesn't affect production. Money in your pocket does affect production, right? So if you're worth $10 million in monopoly money, that some of that monopoly money you can sell off, maybe 10% of it, I don't know. But some amount you can sell off without having a huge impact. But 10% would probably be enough to have a huge impact. Anyway, and that kind of thing might be done in an arranged way at a negotiated price. I don't know how that works, if it's completely open market, or it seems like it should have to be. But anyway, so you've got that going on. And they're not, the fluctuation of having a good year would immediately cause a bad year, because you have to pay taxes with real money. Now, if you could pay taxes with if you could pay unrealized gains with unrealized stock, then that seems like, okay, maybe there's a way that could work, but I don't think the government is allowed to own companies, right? That's part of the way that the free market economy works, is that the government doesn't control the companies. So if we did pay unrealized gains tax in unrealized funds, then that I think that would go against our Constitution. I'm not an expert there, but I just intuitively, right? Okay, so let's take it to the next step. What's going to happen to the smaller businesses? Well, the smaller businesses are more likely to have those big fluctuations. All those cool names that you hear of, TikTok's the new one, although they're Chinese, so I'm not sure how that would apply. But, you see all these companies come and go. If you've been, a teenager over the last decade, has seen how many social media platforms. Oh, well, you're not a teenager for a decade, just shy of one. But anyway, you get the point. Well, when these companies hockey stick, that's when they would be paying unrealized gain tax. So there's the long tail of like struggling. And then when success hits, it's exponential growth. You get your 10 customers, your 100 customers, your 1,000 customers, and they're not really customers, users, your 10,000 users, your 100,000 users. But at some point there's an inflection point and it becomes cool. It goes viral. And so at that point, typically that's when investors want to get in. And so the investors would want to get in, and the investors, if a company is worth $1 million, and then a big investor, because you have different rounds of investment. So you have your pre-seed, your seed, your A, B, C, and so forth. And I don't know how high it goes, but I think I've heard of maybe as high as a D round of funding. But typically these are each an order of magnitude bigger. So your pre-seed round is like $10,000 from friends and family, maybe $100,000. Your seed round is like $1 million. Your A round, your Series A is like 10 million, 50 million, 100 million. Series B, so they're escalating in an order of magnitude. Well, what happens if you have no profit in your company, you have no product, you only have investors that believe in an unrealized way about your company, and somebody comes in and they purchase, a portion of stock. Let's say they give you $1 million for 10%. So if that's 10%, what's the 100%? It's $100 million. So now you owe $90 million in taxes. It would put you out of business. So now think about this so now investors are not going to invest in much. Now that actually that sounds good, because we don't want investors just throwing money around willy-nilly, because it creates weird market dynamics, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay. But, think about this. How easy is it to game the system? Right now, as a competitor to a company, you have to buy the company, right? So when nobody remembers La La Music was around, Apple has to buy the company to acquire them, right? Now imagine that Apple can strategically pump $10 million right at the edge of the fiscal year. So say in December, they pump $10 million into this small company, increase its valuation at midnight. Now, boom, they have to pay taxes on $90 million. They got $10 million in unrealized, by getting $10 million, it increases the stock value. And I'm mixing a few different metaphors, because there's public stock and there's private stock and the way investment works, whatever. But the general idea is the same. Okay. But somebody could maliciously purchase stock. They wouldn't be able to maliciously invest, because you have to agree to investment. But they could maliciously purchase stock if the stock were public, which would then cause those people to have to pay taxes, and then Apple can sell it the next day, right? They pump the stock on December 31st, they sell it on January 1st. Maybe a few suckers the first couple of years or so buy in that money, but then Apple can sell it right away if Apple is doing this. So because the way that the unrealized gain tax would work, the way that gains tax works in general is that you only pay when you win. You don't get any benefit when you lose. So you roll the dice, and if you win, the government takes a cut. But if you lose, you don't even get to claim it as a loss. Not only do you not get any government assistance from it, you don't even get to claim it as a loss. You just don't claim it as a profit. So big tech could ruin up-and-coming companies and then buy them at a discount. So you could do this pump and dump scheme on the stock and then buy them at a discount. So if this were implemented, that's what would happen immediately. So the idea is Why did I say this is good? Well, in theory, why this would be really good is that it would eliminate big tech from happening, because once the system is gamed a few times like this, people are going to wise up, and they're not going to be as heavy with investment, or not as heavy with the volatility would bend down a little bit, and we get more smaller tech and less ginormous big tech. But that's not how it would actually play out if it were implemented now. That would be how it would play out if it were implemented from the beginning. And I'll propose a solution that would do kind of what this does, but would take effect now. It just wouldn't do what they're saying, because obviously the billionaires, that their money's, if they're past the hockey stick, they're already past the hockey stick. You can't retroactively charge them unrealized gain tax, because they're not getting the unrealized gains once they're past the hockey stick. They're just getting the fluctuation. But okay, so let's scale this back. So eventually what would happen is companies would be smaller and more focused. The problem is that all the big companies that are established are already established. So you would never have a new FANG company, because you would never have a company that could take on the investment without having to pay taxes on the unrealized gains. And so then you would be stuck where the big tech that exists today would pretty much never go away, and no big tech company would ever be able to be produced again, because they would never be able to leverage the amount of money that was available to the people that it's available to now. So what else could we do about this? The number one problem in terms of big tech, and so we've already dispelled the myth that like this money would end up going to the people, right? Because what would happen is companies would just go bankrupt, because they wouldn't be paying $90 million on a $10 million investment for the unrealized gains of the $100 million that they became. This is how it was worth $2.2 million. It was worth $2.2 million because people bought private stock in our company, and that pushed my net worth up. So I had unrealized gains of pretty much the whole $2.2 million, because we never shipped a product during that whole time. I think the only sale that we ever made was for, I believe, $10. Yeah. So like sale as in services, goods or services rendered. I sold a domain through the company as part of the beta before focus got shifted elsewhere. Anyway. But the core problem that we have, and to some degree what I'm talking about would apply here too, but there's a form, it's the 83B election. This is how big tech got its power, and this is the way that we would get rid of big tech. Because what the 83B election does, and it's similar to what the unrealized gain tax would do, but it's a little bit different, okay? And it's a little bit more generous to small businesses if we get rid of this. The 83B election is what allows a company to get invested in the first place without being taxed. If a company does not file an 83B election and they get investment, literally they have to dissolve and figure out how to reform that, or they have to hire extremely powerful lawyers. They are in for a hurt. Because without filing that form, as they get investment, the net worth increases, and then they have to pay taxes on the net worth essentially. So if we get rid of the 83B election, so say get rid of don't worry about this because it's not real money anyway. What this would force to happen is something similar, which is that any new company would have to have a positive relationship with its customers. Meaning that it would have to identify a product that people need in the market that they can sell. Because in order to increase in value, they would have to first increase in profit. The 83B election allows you to increase in profit without increasing in value. And this is part of the stock market the way it is anyway. If you look at companies like Apple, Google, etc., they are absolutely, from a mathematical perspective, if you run the numbers, they are not worth their stock value. The only reason their stock value is worth what it's worth is speculatively. Because the real value of the stock, the actual value, not the unrealized value, but the actual value of the stock is what you earn in dividends. So you buy stock, you get dividends. So in theory, you would want to buy stock at which the dividends are well above the interest rate that you would earn at a bank through the Fed, right? So if a company is very profitable, it would turn out a lot of dividends, and then the stockholders would get that. So people would want to buy the stock in anticipation of the dividends, but they don't buy the stock in anticipation of the dividends. They buy the stock in anticipation of selling it to another sucker who doesn't understand how the stock system works, or who does, but just believes that there's another sucker down the line that's going to believe in it more. Because if we actually paid for stock based on its value, then we would only, I mean, the whole stock problem is pretty much created by the government in the first place, but so the solution might be to get rid of it. Another solution might be to cap how much more you're allowed to pay for stock than what the stock is worth, because you can calculate what the stock is worth. Stock is not speculative in terms of dividends, not by very much, because you could say, well, they had this, the dividends were this good last year, I think they're going to be this good this year or not. And then you can have a range, right? Apple is not ever going to make twice as much money because there's not twice as many people on the planet to sell to, and the people they're selling to don't have twice as much money to spend. So Apple is capped out. Apple is not a growth company. They have no way to grow. And this is true of most of big tech. They have no way to grow because they've captured the entire market. So their stock is entirely speculative. It's not based on dividends at all, because there's the relationship of the stock price from what you get back in the interest, the dividends on the stock price, is unrelated. You'd be better off putting your money in the bank, except that you're not buying and selling based on dividends. You're based on buying and selling based on the perception of what other people believe that the stock will be worth, based on what they believe that other people will believe that the stock is worth. So it's a Ponzi scheme. Whatever. But if we get rid of the 83B election, what happens is that a company has to be profitable from the start. What they'd have to do is debt financing. So with investment, there's no responsibility, there's no accountability. If you get investment as a company, the only accountability that you have is that you're going to give away control of the company to someone else. But you have no responsibility to make them money. If you lose all the money, it is not a problem. You're not going to have to pay off debts. You're not going to go to jail. You're not going to lose your house. No negative consequences happen to somebody who takes on investment and spends it unwisely. And it's very hard to say that what someone was doing wasn't a business purpose. They needed to take that trip to the Bahamas because they were going to rub shoulders with other millionaires and billionaires, right? And that's valid. Like, if you need to rub shoulders with people if you're going to go up. That's how it is. So even some of these things are really extravagant. It's hard to prove that it's not a business expense, right? There's something like paying for hookers. That one, they can come down on you for. But how many millions of dollars can you pay in hookers? I think if they all, well, I won't make comment. I think that a lot of people, if they got that much money, might choose a different lifestyle because they might aspire to other things. All right, anyway, so 83B election. If this goes away, then companies have to be profitable, because in order to take on debt, you have to show profit. You have to have collateral. Investment requires no collateral. Debt requires collateral. If you go to a bank, you have to present them with a plan. You have to show profitability. You have to give them reason to believe that you will be able to pay back the debt. And if you don't pay back the debt, then you lose things. Like, if you lose an investor's money, you don't lose anything. You might become in debt to other people. You might not be able to pay the building rent, but you are not liable. If you take money from the bank, then you are liable. The bank will come and seize your assets. They will stop production. So this creates a virtuous relationship between the business and the customer, because the business must satisfy the customer. And we've talked about all this stuff with privacy laws and this, that, and the other. So although the effect that the unrealized gain tax would ultimately have in terms of creating businesses that are smaller would not necessarily have the same effect on profitability as it would with the 83B election. And in terms of what would happen moving forward, I just think that driving businesses towards profitability to create real money in the economy, tangible money, money that you can cash out at a bank in full. You can go to a bank and you can, I mean, I guess typically once you're over $100,000, you're not putting all your money in a bank, because if you went to a single bank and asked to pull out all that money, it might, you might have to go to multiple banks and stuff like that. But the point is, putting real money in the economy, real products in the economy, gaining customers, meaning people who pay, not users, meaning people who are going to be sold, their data is going to be sold, you have better outcomes. So anyway, that's what I had to say about that. I hope, I don't know what what impact this knowledge will have, but I hope that it has some impact. And even though I explain it imperfectly, and an accountant could tear me apart on this, I have been worth $2.2 million. I have a sense of how the system works. I may be explaining some of the particulars wrong because it's not my area of expertise, but that is, in broad strokes, that is how the system works. And the unrealized gain tax would just not actually have the benefit to taxes that it would purport to have. And it's going to stifle small business and competition. We do need something like that. We do need something to stifle fake money, Ponzi scheme money in the economy. But we certainly can't, you can't tax Ponzi scheme money because the money's not there, well, I mean, at some level it is, but in the case of stocks, it's not there. So, but the 83B election, if we could get rid of that, that would produce profitable companies. Now, a profitable company, I just don't know if a profitable company could ever grow as quickly or as large as a government-sponsored company. When I say government-sponsored, where does the money that the investors get come from? It comes from the Fed. It is money that is printed for free by the government, and essentially has no, it's not that it has no consequences. There are some consequences, but it's relatively no consequences. The way that they're able to mitigate their risk and everything, and invest, have a strategic portfolio, etc. And if they actually lose the money, then there's, it's pretty much the government funded Google. That's why you see big tech tends to side with government, because the incentives are aligned, and regulation like this, I'm sure that most big tech would be in favor of this because they would have nothing to lose from it, but it would stifle competition, and it would make it easier for them to game the system. It would make them, it would make it easier for them to do hostile buyouts, etc. So there's a lot about it that I think is good, because we need to get rid of the funny money, the Ponzi schemes, the unrealized gains, but the unrealized gain tax is probably not the way to do it. So with that, I'm going to head back to doing the important things that I had to do today. Hope it was helpful and enlightening. Adios.